I've been a fan of the Dragon Age series for a long time. I've finished Dragon Age Origins at least 3 times, and I finished Dragon Age Inquisition. I actually never finished Dragon Age Inquisition. Never too late to start, so I downloaded it last year, got some mods for quality of life changes and better gameplay. Plus, I was off the heels of modding Skyrim, which has an extremely robust modding community. And I was excited to see what they had made for Dragon Age Inquisition. Especially since Inquisition lacked a lot of black hairstyle choices.
This is all I got. This is all I got.
A problem I've had since Origins. So I searched and I found the color black hair, not the people black hair. I'm not sure why I didn't expect this. I think I got too used to the TikTok search engine. But I kept searching and I tried looking for locks, I tried looking for dreadlocks, and all I found was... I'm not trying to be mean, but these hairstyles, I don't think they were intended for black people. Or at least they didn't have us in mind when making them. This is just to say that I was a little disappointed when I found them.
Why are you trying to make it sound like you didn't use these hairstyles?
Yes, I have to admit, I used the retextured locks. Even the NPCs were using the retextured locks.
All that complaining just to wear these whack dreads.
Yo,
leave me alone, man. I'm talking about my own question, man. No, question, man.
Listen, I need more choices. I need these dev teams to have more black people on them, and I need more black modders. If you are a black modder, please show up. And in Dragon Age Inquisition, it felt like they weren't even trying. Like, we got 3 hairstyles, and we didn't even get cornrows this time, like in the last game, Dragon Age Origins.
You keep forgetting about Dragon Age 2.
What? I'm talking about it right now.
No, that's the 3rd game in the series. This is a trilogy that you're talking about so far.
Oh, Dragon Age 2. I forgot about that game.
Didn't you say you were a big fan of Dragon Age? How did you forget the 2nd game in the trilogy?
Really looking like a fraud right now.
He put the ball on the floor. He can do turnarounds. He had one of the best footworks inside.
You have no idea how good Tim Duncan was. Oh my God.
I should probably go back and play them. The only thing I can really remember is that the romances were kind of boring. But then again, I was also 13 when I played them. So I guess I can check 2 to see if they have any more hairstyles, and yeah, it's the same as the first one. Except they added like 12 more straight hairstyles, and still nothing for black women. This also sucks because if you pick one gender, you can only have the hairstyles for that gender. So if you want to play as a black woman, you can't pick the one protective hairstyle that the men have. How can BioWare make these cool fantasy and sci-fi races, but no cornrows, dragons, but no dreads? How did we lose a style? And if I remember correctly, the choices weren't that much better in Mass Effect either. I'm adding this in late because I forgot that the Asari, a race of blue women that Mass Effect has, they have built-in cornrows. BioWare is out here giving aliens cornrows but can't give me any. I almost wanted to say that this is a very specific thing that happens in sci-fi and fantasy spaces. It might be the genre's fixation on Eurocentric settings, but looking into it, it's very hit or miss. In fact, I remember that Knights of the Old Republic and Star Wars The Old Republic, both made by BioWare, have better choices for black hairstyles. So BioWare can do it when they want to, but for this game, they just chose not to. Skyrim, a game that came out in 2011, has better choices for black hairstyles. Plus, with fantasy and sci-fi tropes that deal with things like war, authoritarianism, propaganda, bigotry, social and geopolitics. This almost feels like a rug pull, especially when you think that they're interested in exploring these allegories and metaphors from different perspectives. This isn't to say that I hate the trope of fantasy racism. I actually have a little bit of a soft spot for it when it's done well. I even picked a Dalish elf as my first character.
1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
I guess I have a preference. It's just that I can't help but feel that the messages of fantasy racism fall short when you can tell that the writers have a bit of a racial bias themselves. I would love to get more into the writing aspects, but right now I'm just talking about hair. A very surface level issue that can be fixed pretty quickly. I tried to think of why they were so limited with the black hairstyles they put in the game, this being their 3rd iteration too. Maybe they were in a time crunch and they were just strapped for resources. And I know that Mass Effect came out a year after they started development on Dragon Age Inquisition, which could have something to do with it, The final year of crunch time for a video game is probably the worst from what I've heard. I considered that maybe Anthem, the live service game that EA forced them to make, could have disrupted their development. But from the looks of it, it doesn't even seem like Anthem would have caused any problems with Inquisition's development, as the trailer came out as early as 2017 and was only in development before then for 15 to 18 months. So for the most part, this was a normal development period. They sadly just didn't consider black hair to be a priority. And they took away the one good hairstyle and left us with nothing.
Hello?
Adventure Support.
Yeah, I seen the update. You only added an afro and you took off the fade.
Well, I mean, you said you wanted a new hairstyle.
We got more hairstyles than 2 hairstyles.
You sound a little upset.
Maybe a little upset, but I'm more disappointed than anything else. Like, why was the one black companion that they added DLC with no big story importance? Looking at it, Vivian was actually the first black companion in the entire franchise. Actually, let me do some math. I checked through all the characters, from Dragon Age Origins to Dragon Age Inquisition. I even put on Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect Andromeda. 100 companions. Main ones, temporary ones, and DLC. And there are a total of 3 black companions in all of them. You can count them on one hand. Vivian, Jacob, and Liam. If it's this bad for us as black people, I can't say it's any better for other people of color. But if this was due to crunch, which I know is rampant in the gaming industry, I would prefer that publishers, CEOs, and managers give their development team more time. One, because I don't want these developers sleeping under their desks to make deadlines, but 2, because I would like my hairstyles. Plus, I've seen the choices that people get in athletic games such as NBA 2K or Madden NFL, and I am beyond jealous of them. This problem becomes exponentially worse when it comes to anime and East Asian games as well. I've had a way harder time finding a good black hairstyle in one of these anime games. And if they put a black character in the game, I just hope they don't add on some weird stereotype. I would like to avoid the infantilization of East Asian people when they don't properly represent black people or black culture respectfully, as a lot of these companies can be outright offensive with their depictions of black people and other cultures outside of their own. And the conversation can get a little muddied of whether they did it on purpose or whether they didn't mean it or they didn't know what it meant. And this goes back to the infantilization of they were just completely unaware of its cultural impact. Sometimes knowing that it can be offensive, but they just deem it as something silly or fun, but not understanding that it could be very harmful. These jokes materializing into very real actions, perpetuating harmful stereotypes to get a cheap laugh. This leads people to question how to respect our humanity or whether it should be respected at all. This representation is very dehumanizing, and we should have the right to expect ourselves to be represented properly in East Asian media. With that said, I still do like a lot of Japanese media. I showed a picture of Jinx and Mr. Popo. Dragon Ball happens to be one of my top favorite animes, and Pokemon is one of my favorite video games. For some of these companies, they have tried to do their due diligence and fix a lot of the more offensive characters that they've made. It's either that or they make better black characters down the line after learning that their previous designs were very offensive. Sometimes it just feels like death by a thousand cuts, expecting some good representation or representation for black people at all.
Is it? I swear to God. You laughing, girl? You trying to laugh? This funny?
And from what I've heard, Genshin Impact fans are going through something very similar, because every 2 to 4 months I hear about a controversy because they failed to give proper representation for anybody who wasn't pale or skinny. And a lot of this controversy is coming from their new update where they introduced the land of Natlan. Natlan is supposed to be inspired by real world cultures and mythologies, something that they've done before with other countries such as China, Japan, and France. This time, Hoyoverse, the creators of Genshin Impact, wanted to try their hand at the pre-colonial indigenous Americas, Pacific Islanders, and West Africa. Oh boy. I can't speak for any of these cultures, but I can say that the reputation that Hoyoverse has doesn't give me much confidence with how they're going to represent these groups. Hoyoverse has such a bad track record when it comes to their very biased character design that it has gotten to the point where the amount of jokes and memes that I've seen pop up on my feed about Genshin Impact can be put in their own category. To Hoyoverse's seemingly pitiful attempts at creating a diverse cast, to jokes of how obvious the whitewashing of their characters are. And from all my time within other fandoms, I don't think I've ever seen this amount of redesigns for characters to fix them. The seemingly diverse and expansive audience that Hoyo has attracted has given them certain expectations that they haven't been able to meet, which is strange and disappointing because of how big of a company they are now due to Genshin Impact's success, because of their expansive fanbase. As much as their fanbase might be filled with a lot of thirsty men
And thirsty women.
which, let me be clear, is not a bad thing at all.
Not whatsoever.
Nothing to be ashamed of.
Just restrain yourselves.
The point is that Genshin fans are clearly craving more than just a pretty face. There is also a failure of identification when it comes to people of darker skin tones, making players scavenge to create and download new mods as a band-aid for this game's lack of dark skin and cultural representation in these new lands. This raises the question of why the dev team didn't think to put any playable black characters or any proper dark skin characters in their game, when the new area that they made focuses on real-world cultures inspired by dark-skinned people. So it feels like Hoyoverse is only willing to pander to certain audiences that align with their limited cultural worldview. But there are also fans who don't take the cultural links that seriously and don't think of it as that deep. At the same time, they realize that the game that they love is made by a bunch of people who don't really care for certain skin tones. This has made people want to distance themselves from Hoyoverse as they realize this company will not handle diversity in the future that well or as well as they would like them to. And big companies like this will usually throw a bone to a substantial part of their fanbase to appease them. This is something that Blizzard Entertainment, the creators of World of Warcraft, have done with their Chinese audience, creating an entire expansion for them, when that Chinese audience makes up about 60% of their players. And when making a game that is trying to achieve a global audience, there are many other examples of games making their roster of characters a lot more inclusive. So this just seems like a smart business move to make. But for some reason Hoyoverse just hasn't done it. And this has given them the reputation that they do not care about diversity whatsoever. I almost want to laugh at the Black Genshin Impact fans when they keep expecting a studio that very clearly doesn't want our representation or value representation of dark-skinned people in general. Keep asking Hoyoverse for proper black representation in their games, along with better designs for dark-skinned playable characters. Because it is so obvious that this game studio does not care about representing dark-skinned characters. And it feels like they're just playing in your face at this point. So why even bother pushing for it? But with that said, I can't laugh. These are all completely reasonable asks and the bare minimum that any company should be able to achieve. So this is much more shameful for Hoyoverse than it is for their fans. The fact that they had a character inspired by an African god be the palest character on the entire roster and look nothing like a black person. And we've already gone over that anime and East Asian games are not new to not including a diverse palette of skin tones and hairstyles, especially when it comes to their playable characters. So why exclude Genshin Impact when it seems that a majority of these East Asian gacha games are not held to the same standard? Because as you can see with a lot of these gacha games, a majority of the cast are fair-skinned. And it's not as if, goodness.
You okay there, buddy?
Out of all the gacha games, this thing still caught me off guard. I think I got a little too used to the watered down fan service.
I guess Genshin was holding back the whole time.
So they were compensating with Zenless Zone Zero.
Just a wait event.
Had to find some place to put all their over-sexualized lolly characters.
So that's why they hired the Water Kuma guy.
Ugh, that guy's gross, don't talk about him.
There has to be a game that doesn't include lollies that fits my sense of taste.
Yeah, and of all the games they had to put children in this one, I'm afraid I'm gonna be put on a list. Why? Why would they put a kid in a game like this?
Oh, I found one. I got one.
Oh, okay, good. What is it?
It's a beautiful game filled with a whole bunch of sapphic lesbians.
I am just trying to do research, and now I know too much about games that I don't even play. I think we gotta get back to the main point.
Yeah, what were we talking about?
Before we got distracted. So it's not as if I'm trying to single out Genshin Impact for no reason. They stated themselves that these new lands were going to be influenced by real world cultures. Cultures that I feel they failed to represent properly. So it's more of the fact that they set up a goal that they wanted to achieve and missed the mark completely. And this gave their fans expectations that they did not intend to meet. So it definitely feels like Genshin Impact has a racial bias when it comes to their character design, especially when it comes to their playable characters. And I feel like I glossed over this point where this region was based off of multiple cultures, whereas in past updates, they were only based off of one. The combination of sub-Saharan Africa, pre-colonial Americas, and Pacific Islanders is not a new thing. This is a practice that's still employed in many Eurocentric history books and museums, something that they are trying to get away from due to the historical biases that they emphasize. But I'm wondering why Genshin Impact wanted to do the same thing, and they could have just stuck to one country and milked them for all they had. They didn't even have to stick to the pre-colonial themes.
And they didn't.
Yeah, and it feels like such a waste when you say pre-colonial and you don't deliver on it. But I do like the idea of adding in post-colonial cultures. The way that Genshin implemented those modern aspects does come across as very lazy. As far as I know, there's no in-game story reason for why they look like this. And I've seen a lot of fans point out that stylistically this is very different from the other lands. So this could be Genshin going in a different direction, but it has no explanation for really why they're doing it. And it makes me think that they were maybe afraid of the cultures that they were taking from and if they would appeal to their audience. So instead of trying to take inspiration from these cultures and give them a more authentic look, they instead decided to whitewash them in a sense or make them more palatable to their audience. And the more I think about these choices, the more questions I have. Like, did they do this just to mess with people? Was this like some oh haha funny bait and switch?
Oh, you thought this was a rabbit? They thought this was a rabbit. Oh, that's funny. That's fucking funny. It's fucking Winnie the Pooh. Yeah.
One of the other strange decisions that Hoyoverse makes when creating a character is washing out a lot of the darker brown skin with gray tones. Funnily enough, the Genshin Impact fandom has called these characters ashy. And if they do have a darker skin character, there is a good chance that they're just going to whitewash them later in some other artwork that they've made. And this isn't something specific to Genshin Impact. In fact, I've seen many artists who struggle with their own racial biases and colorism. Even if the artist states that they like drawing black people and people with dark skin, their style can actually exclude a lot of rich ethnic features that make a person more identifiable as that race or ethnicity. A weird avoidance that some people have when drawing darker skin tones.
They got us looking like vampires.
Yeah, and I can't say I like the gray undertones rather than the more red undertones. But unlike other artists, we can see that Genshin knows how to draw darker skin characters. So when it comes to the playable characters, I know they're supposed to have more desirable traits than the other NPCs. So when making a playable character with dark skin, I think they're trying to avoid making them seem like they have those ethnic features. Probably assuming that their audience has the same racial biases that they have themselves, and making these changes to make them more appealing so they don't other them. But from what I've seen, Genshin Impact is getting a lot of backlash from their Chinese audience members, being a Chinese company themselves, as well as some of their voice actors calling them out for their racial biases. And I don't think it is ever the right decision to appeal to the side of your audience that is more closed-minded. So Hoyo seems very standoffish when it comes to making their characters who are supposed to have dark skin have a natural brown tone. Okay, so not a good start, but what about the other characters? Were there any other characters that were black, dark skin, or coded by their culture? The answer is sadly yes. The only characters that are allowed to be racially coded are the NPCs and the enemies that you're allowed to kill. When this happens in media, it feels like I'm forced to ask myself some questions. Questions like, why don't these creators want to add more black people or people of color? Why are we rarely, if ever, important to the plot? And why can't our physical and cultural traits be represented properly? And whenever I ask these questions, I know that without a doubt, someone is doing the exact same, whether this be in real life or online. And then I know that the typical responses are coming. Stuff like, there's no big important reason to have you in here, or including a person of color would be a little forced. People with dark skin don't really fit the style, or people of color just don't market well. Even some of the more outlandish reasonings like, we already have a person of color, do we need more? And while there are certainly more reasons, the last one I'll say is, it's not that we didn't want to include a person of color, it's just that we didn't think to add one. When I hear a lot of this, I round up a lot of these excuses as, not including your race or culture doesn't have anything to do with us being racially biased. Because as you can see, we have thinly veiled reasons for why we can't include people of your race or culture in our media. No matter how many holes you could bring up in their arguments as to why there are totally legitimate reasons for why your race and culture can be included, there is always one reason, no matter how small it is, for why you cannot exist in their world. And that I should be happy for the little crumbs of inclusion that I got. I think it can be frustrating, but I think that's the point, to make us go around in circles arguing forever. And it sucks because the core of the argument is always how and why we should exist in these spaces. I don't know about you, but constantly having to reason and upsell why you deserve to take up space can be a very vulnerable and alienating experience. And I'm not trying to say that Hoyoverse is this evil company trying to go way out of their way to make people feel this existential crisis. I do, however, think that it takes a lot of heart and care to do things the right way, a virtue that I think Hoyo and any other person should strive to achieve. I will try and give Genshin Impact some credit here because when it comes to their architecture and the music in-game, I think they do a good job. I do wish that this was more than just set dressing though. I'm not sure, but it seems like if you were to take away some of those aspects, it almost wouldn't even matter. Because when culture is just a hat that you can put on, it doesn't really add much depth in the end. Especially when I think they put much more effort into their other expansions. And those seem to have paid off, especially when you look at their designs. Again, I have not played the game, but when I look at the Fontaine designs, they look so freaking good. There seems to be a lot of fun and flair that they take with their creative liberties, but you can still tell that they are very heavily French inspired. And I don't even like the French.
Yeah, I hate the French.
So when I look at Natlin and I see that their designs aren't really staying true to their motif, especially when it comes to the playable characters again, because their design philosophy is just all over the place. They look like they're inspired more by other video games and video game characters than they are by real world cultures. Like we got this Hot Topic wannabe,
Shadow the Hedgehog #2.
or this budget less gay Bayonetta, Blooper Racing from Super Mario Sunshine, the Oppressor Mark II from GTA 5,
Oh, that gives me PTSD.
Sonic from Sonic the Hedgehog, Dr. Wily from Mega Man, the reference to 8-bit and 16-bit video games,
Kind of proving your point.
Jet Set Radio, and what is this?
This is going in my folder for later.
I thought you said restrain yourselves.
Yeah, I told them to, not me.
Okay, enjoy your feeding fetish, pervert.
Okay, yeah, thanks, I will. Wait, pervert.
I'll be honest and say I actually do like a lot of these designs. It's just when they're associated with the culture that they're supposed to be influenced by, that's when I have a problem with them. Plus, I have seen much better examples of other games being able to do better designs for those cultures. It starts to feel like weaponized incompetence the way that this game tries to go so far out of its way to not represent these cultures that I have to wonder why they even chose to do them in the first place, when there is clearly not enough appreciation to make sure that these cultures' most identifiable traits are at the forefront. You start to get the sense that they're a little embarrassed of these cultures and afraid or skittish of putting them in their game. And these gacha games make so much money for their company that there is no way that they were strapped for cash trying to figure out how to fund research for their next update. So they have the resources, we have the landscape of previous other games making characters that better fit the cultures that they're influenced from. So if they really wanted to, they could have just copied off another developer's homework.
Yeah, and that's something they're pretty used to doing.
I can't help but come to the conclusion that Hoyoverse has an extreme racial bias. I wish I could think otherwise, but I have high expectations for a company that has so much money to spend. I know that I've stated that other companies have done a much better job of representing cultures and other perspectives, so I should probably show a company that is famous for its inspiring creativity and robust library, to the point that it has put itself on the top of the best modern creatives, that being the creative minds behind Walt Disney Animation.
So, out of all the artists in the world, all the studios, you picked Disney. Doesn't that seem kind of convenient?
I mean, yeah, that's the point. An easy reference so people can get it pretty quickly.
I think you're being lazy so you don't have to search up any other cultured artists.
I'm gonna ignore the fact that you're bullying me for 1 second so I can tell everyone that I am going somewhere with this, so please bear with me.
Disney's not going to sponsor you just because you kissed up to them. You know that, right? This is basically free promotion for a mega corporation.
Let me also specify that I'm talking about the creatives and the artists, not the upper management or CEOs. Much of their work can still be heavily appreciated when you look back at it, and as time goes on.
Not all of it.
Well, yeah, of course not all of it, but when it comes to Disney, I don't exactly have to do a lot of digging. Like the vibrant Greek mythology in Hercules, the long-standing integrity of Chinese traditions in Mulan, the beauty and delicate mythologies of the Pacific Islanders in the movie Moana, and the complex cultures and social dynamics in the movie Princess and the Frog. Disney has its pitfalls, but when it comes to their artists, I feel like if you give them enough creative space, they could be trusted with almost any perspective, any culture, and they will do it justice. Trusting a company to deliver a quality product and to respect your culture and identity is priceless. And I think that can take a company or an artist very far in their career, which is the opposite of what I think Hoyoverse has done within the last couple of months. Burning bridges with a lot of their audience members and purging any goodwill that they had to get new fans. Disney understands that handling someone's culture with grace can earn them a lot of loyalty. I don't know if I can say if Hoyoverse even cared to gain any of that.
We became very aware of how significant hula is to Hawaiian culture and tradition, and that a lot of their history is passed down through the dances. And we knew that that has such a spiritual and cultural significance that we didn't want to step on it in any way.
We wanted to capture it in a real way. We wanted it to be absolutely realistic so that people who know hula and come from Hawaii would see it as real.
To be honest, hula is something that you don't see treated with a lot of respect sometimes in Hollywood movies. So we made it our mission from the very beginning to make sure that we were not only respectful, but that respectfulness was shown by being completely accurate with our movements, with the timing and everything. So the only way we could do that is going to a hula master, going to a hula school, a halau. We were very fortunate to find Mark Keli'i Ho'omalu. We took an entire camera crew to Mark's halau and filmed hula for an entire day.
Mark's dancing style is very unique and it's widely regarded.
I love the one where they're sliding in the moss and then there's a turnaround.
After getting all this reference on film, we talked about having the animators reference that. I think it's important to note that rotoscope, which is actually taking those images and actually like tracing over them, nothing was rotoscoped. It was all interpretation by looking at the film and just drawing it flat out. We had a long talk with the animators and we let them know that you watch that video very, very carefully and anything you see, you put on the paper. If there's a hand movement, a head movement, if they looked a certain way, you put that on paper.
Through this attention to detail, the animators were able to capture the elaborate and beautiful Hawaiian dance, the hula.
I would like to talk over this, not just because I think it would get a copyright strike from Disney, but I would also like to go over this because I think it is a great example of a company doing the work to make sure that they are not caught off guard by blind spots that they are not culturally aware of. All this took was about 1 or 2 people being culturally or socially aware enough to understand that they are guests in another group's culture. They didn't need a whole media team telling them how to put one foot in front of the other. It was their cultural sensitivity and maybe even learning from the mistakes of their past. In movies like Aladdin or Pocahontas, where they were especially out of their cultural depth, where they began to lean into stereotypes and erasure of history. So even if it's just learning from your company's past mistakes or even learning from the mistakes of other people, I do wish that Genshin Impact did their due diligence in making sure that they handled another person's culture properly. Because if we look at this video, all it took was one day to make sure that they got it right the first time instead of having a lifetime of regrets. And now they can look at their work and be proud of the fact that it stands the test of time. I'm not done yet, because of all the trouble and drama that Genshin Impact has been causing around the globe, they have done one thing that I need to call them out for.
No, the section on Genshin is already so damn long. Hold on, didn't we already go over this before?
Yeah, we did, with the not as gay Bayonetta.
Still prefer Shadow the Hedgehog number 2.
To cover my grounds just a little bit, I have to say that this is all alleged. There is no solid proof of plagiarizing, just similarities that I and many others have pointed out.
Yeah, keep those lawsuits away from me.
First of all, to state the obvious, yes, Genshin has been called a Breath of the Wild clone for a while now. This is something that's been stated by fans and haters alike, that even to the core of its gameplay, people have found that there are so many one-to-one comparisons that you can make between the two games, that even the glitches that are in Breath of the Wild are in Genshin Impact as well.
Taking inspiration from a game as well received as Breath of the Wild is understandable, and honestly more games should take inspiration from it. But I did begin to wonder how Genshin Impact's developers were able to get away with this level of similarity. Genshin Impact even keeps some of Breath of the Wild's issues, such as automatically clambering onto objects you didn't mean to. But to its credit, Genshin also streamlined some things from Breath of the Wild's gameplay system, such as fast swimming instead of Breath of the Wild's swim dash option.
There have also been accusations floating around of Genshin stealing designs from other gacha games, something that again we've previously gone over. Apparently within the gacha game community, almost every big gacha game company has been accused of this. Which doesn't surprise me, as a lot of big companies like to push profit and growth rather than focusing on new and original ideas. And that's when we start to see a lot of them begin to cut corners. But as much as I would like to talk about all the different ways that MiHoYo has stolen designs from different video games, this video is supposed to focus more on issues surrounding my identity, and why I specifically have a problem with Hoyo as a black person. So when I heard that the rollerblading, DJing, jet set radio type character that is based on pre-colonial Aztec culture, pre-colonial Aztec culture, pre-colonial Aztec culture.
Were they even trying?
I don't even know if it matters at this point anymore. But that character has an idol dance that seems very heavily based off of a real person's dance moves. which they didn't give her credit or even compensate her for. The video was made in 2020 and the character was revealed in 2024. Even in the comments section, you can see that people are bringing up the fact that they are so similar, going as far as saying the character's name, implying that the dancer Oyomi Janta is the skating Genshin Impact character that they like so much. When people brought up these comparisons, it caught the attention of Oyomi Janta, and she threatened Hoyo with a lawsuit for stealing her moves. I guess rather than going through a lawsuit, Hoyo decided shortly after to just change the character's moves, but only slightly so it didn't infringe on any sort of copyright. I'm not sure if the lawsuit is still going, but when she did this, it riled up a lot of Genshin Impact fans. And I have seen a lot of misinformation and disinformation about what goes under copyright law and what is protected. Many people downplaying this as just a silly little TikTok dance, but a lot of other art forms have faced the same scrutiny. Professionals saying you can't just whittle down music to notes on a page, or pointing out that an artist stole a character design from another person and saying that that's just the style. Devaluing art as a whole just to protect a company that is trying to cut corners hurts all of us. I'm totally fine with an artist saying that they were inspired by another person and wearing their influences on their sleeve. But lifting someone else's art and claiming ownership over it is completely disingenuous. But this goes a little bit deeper, as a lot of companies like to look towards black people for designs they want to take from. Artists like Picasso are famous for doing this. He's even stated that stealing art is the only way to be a good artist. The music industry has also had a centuries-long practice of taking the stylings of black music, as well as genres that black people have helped to cultivate, and then putting a more preferred, mainstream, desirable face on top of that. Companies now pushing out black people from those spaces now that they no longer need them to profit off of that genre. The entertainment industry is also very well known for taking roles that would have been made for black people or other people of color, such as historical retellings and story adaptations, and putting a white actor in place of them.
Some observers say Hollywood just doesn't provide enough good roles for black actors. One of the reasons for this might be that even when there are roles for non-white actors, they sometimes still get played by white people. All of this is nothing new. White actors have taken roles designed for every ethnicity throughout Hollywood history. From there to all of this would be less egregious if any time an actor of color took on a traditionally white role, half the country didn't go apeshit.
The appearance of a black stormtrooper in the first trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens is causing a lot of chatter on social media, even some racist comments. Several people were apparently upset that the actress playing the character is African American.
So from this, as black people, we get a little bit defensive and have some anxiety over being pushed out of spaces and unincluded in those spaces that we've helped cultivate. When it comes to game companies who steal, take influence from other dancers, only one is best known for it, and that is Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite and the Unreal Engine. Fortnite being one of the biggest and most profitable current battle royale games. Fortnite is almost more known for their emotes and collabs than they are for their actual game,
as well as their characters who people like a lot.
But with Fortnite, they have been hit with several lawsuits because they copy dances from other people without giving proper recognition or compensation. Many of these cases have been dropped on both sides except for one that I know of, because fighting them and winning has never been sure for either side. Before 2024, all of the lawsuits against Fortnite were dropped, except for the one that I mentioned, which was revived in 2024 and settled. This was a landmark case, as it revolutionized the way we think about dance and choreography, as the previous ruling goes against most of the ways that copyright law is supposed to be handled. Because the previous judge said that the dances that Fortnite used were too short to be protected under copyright law. But this would also mean that we would have to change the copyright law for songs and drawings as well. If a song is too short or a character is too simple, does that mean those things aren't allowed to be protected under copyright law? This decision, I think, needed to be updated, as the way dance has been monetized recently by games is proof that individuals need more guards in place when companies want to profit off of them. So just like Genshin Impact, Fortnite will just change the dances just slightly so no one gets offended. Unlike Genshin Impact, Fortnite now reaches out to these people to see if they can use their dances, and then gives them credit for it, as well as some compensation. So with Genshin seemingly just tracing over a dancer, using her dance to promote their character that people are probably going to spend hundreds of dollars to get, without giving her credit or compensation, sets a bad standard for how we should go about getting references for commercial media, and promotes the idea that it is okay to profit off of certain people or groups without giving them any say. Having people in the room from many different walks of life, such as gender, race, and sexual orientation, has its added benefits of making genuine creative art from many different perspectives. From a business perspective, valuing diversity is a good trait as it invites a larger audience. Hollywood misses out on billions when not representing Asian Americans. I know I was talking of Disney just a minute ago.
You were kissing the ground that Disney stands on.
Yeah, I know. But I do have to say that Disney has been trying to break into the Chinese market for decades now, while not doing a proper job of pandering to their Asian American audience.
I still remember how dirty they did American Dragon Jake Long.
Lowering the budget for that amazing show was the worst idea ever. The point I'm trying to make is that while companies think they're making all the money that they can domestically and now they're going worldwide, they still are alienating a lot of people that they have in-house.
Those greedy fools.
Yeah, all those stubborn CEOs being weirdly selective about who they want to pander to while asking all of their properties to make all of the money in the world.
You can't have it both ways, guys. Come on.
There are also many studies that show having a more diverse work environment and test audience can improve decision making as well as provide nuanced ideas.
So in other words, avoid the mistakes that Genshin Impact made.
Yes and no, because we should always be looking at the positives of what valuing diversity can do for us and not just what it can prevent. So diversity is here not just to make the right decisions, but to make good decisions, and not to just avoid making the wrong decisions, though that is a big plus. Now, you don't need to have every single race, creed, and gender in the room when working on a project. A lot of the time, all it takes is people who have an open mind and value diversity and inclusion. This doesn't automatically turn the product of someone's labor into something good, but it does have the ability to turn somebody's good product into something great. I could think of my top favorite video games, and in one of those games, there would be a minority character that is written so poorly that it detracts from the enjoyment of the game. Black people who are two-dimensional stereotypes, and women who are just there to look good for the player. And both can barely add any value to the plot.
Wait. Does that mean I can't have hot men and women in my video games?
No, it just means they need to be written well and serve the plot and be their own character. There is nothing inherently wrong with a character being sexual or provocative. But when writing a character like that, people should always be aware of how it represents certain demographics.
What about that one Gunnar gacha game that you showed off with the crazy firing and reload animations?
I guess I'll give it a pass. The people who made the game aren't trying to make it seem like it's anything more than what it really is. And the people who bought it know what they're getting into. The only problem I have with that game is the inclusion of the children. So many strides have been made in the entertainment industry to make sure that minorities have more 3D personalities. And much of this wouldn't have happened if minorities haven't spoken up for themselves and made sure that they're represented properly. When it comes to a fanbase perspective, a diverse cast can make sure that your fanbase stays very open-minded. Studies also show that this prevents your audience from becoming bigoted, which isn't foolproof, but the small effect does matter. The stain of being known as the company that has a fanbase full of bigots is a hard one to get out. And for companies that try to appeal to more closed-minded viewpoints, it's not going to go over well because they're never going to be satisfied. I've seen so many companies try to throw them a bone and say, hey, maybe this time we're not going to be so woke. But these concessions go completely unnoticed, as the whole goal is to make sure that you are completely on their side, and any mention of diversity is thrown out the window completely. Some of these people are a little too dedicated to their fight against diversity that they would probably make an entire spreadsheet trying to parse out what games are too diverse. I really wish I could be joking about this, but if you haven't seen it, you are so lucky. There's a spreadsheet with a list of over 1,500 games on it, detailing what games are woke and what games aren't. And the best part is, you don't have to do a lot to even get on it. This is a group curated list made by about 3,600 people at the time of recording. As much as I would like to think of this as an isolated event, I've seen the same sentiment shared amongst many people across the internet. I'm just gonna read off a couple of these because I do think they're actually very insightful of how ridiculous their viewpoints can get. As much as I don't like them, I do think a lot of these ways of thinking are very common, and unfortunately, I had to unlearn some of this stuff myself. And I think that the mental and social tools that I got from unlearning these ways of thinking have been very useful in making sure that I don't fall back into old habits. But I also think this helps promote intellectual and nuanced ways of thinking, and knowing that there is more under the surface than what is strictly being said. They list their methodology as quote-unquote woke. Content that equals any images, messages, characters, storytelling, dialogue, music, or game mechanics that include any themes associated with the left side of political aisle in contemporary Western politics. I have to make an attempt at course correcting the misuse of the word woke, as it only means to be socially aware. A lot of being woke is just being sympathetic to people's problems and plights that they're going through in the world. It's probably one of the first things that we're taught when we're younger, to care, share, and be kind to one another. So it's a little disheartening when I hear that people are promoting themselves as not being so woke or not too woke. Because at its core, I can't really say there's anything wrong with it. For me, this goes along the same lines as not wanting to engage with politics or anything political is deemed bad. As having political literacy is a very important tool to have, as the better you are at comprehending messages that people and political figures are trying to tell you, the harder it is to manipulate you. So when I see them list things like anti-free speech messaging or pro-pedophilia messaging, I can parse out that they're not talking about the usual stances that people make when discussing these topics, that they are disingenuously framed to be completely innocuous and seem reasonable. So when they say that a game has anti-free speech messages in it, what they're really trying to say is that when a game is expressing that calling someone slurs is a bad thing, that the game is hindering their freedom of speech, when it is actually trying to promote basic human decency. When they're talking about pro-pedophilia messaging, they could be talking about one of two things. Either showing a relationship between two children who are a part of the LGBTQ+, which is to stigmatize the LGBTQ as something strictly sexual, or they're trying to say that any game that has a romantic relationship between an adult and a minor is strictly left-leaning. A very underhanded way of associating people with left-wing politics with these crude acts. So without further ado, let's get into the woke content detectors curated lists of games. So one that you will see all over this list is contains overtly pro-LGBTQ+ messaging. And I think this starts it off pretty well, because a lot of people would preach that the characters or narrative that are being put in the game are very forced and unnecessary, and that the game isn't calling for someone to be gay, trans, or bisexual. So when they say words like overtly, it's just a way to exaggerate their claim of how forced their messaging is in the game. Pronoun selection, including an option for they, them, uses physique 1 and 2 in place of biological sex during character creation, features multiple LGBTQ+ NPCs, with the player character responding with modern day sentiment. Futa player character option.
Yo, what game is that?
Option for the player character to be non-binary, gay, homosexual companion has you meet his husband and adopted children, the two kiss. Pronoun selection, including an option for they, all companions can be romance regardless of the player character forces gender. You to watch a musical about an alleged past gay romance / affair. The full spectrum banner and decal are rainbow themed customization. The player character is a lesbian with multiple non-binary characters and non-binary romance. There is a trans flag visible during the credits. Features multiple non-binary characters. Introduced a Pride Month event in June 2023. Features a story about two gay men and a love triangle. Same-sex marriage options. Multiple LGBTQ+ character interactions. This remaster changed the self-inflicted death message from player killed himself into player killed themselves. Option for the player character to be gender queer. The player character is a lesbian. If you thought that the games that they put in yellow as informational meant that they were okay with representation as long as it wasn't shoved down your throat, you would have been horribly wrong, as they don't want anybody in the LGBTQ+ existing in any form whatsoever. Even one of the games that they list as not recommended, Mortal Kombat X, is not recommended because they list Kung Jin as being gay and Melina and Tanya as being gay. All three of these characters are not confirmed to be gay. NetherRealm did their story writing in a way that I thought these people would appreciate, which is making a person ambiguously gay. Raiden drops a hint that Kung Jin is in love with somebody. Who it is, I don't know. It could be an outside clan member. It could be maybe an interracial relationship.
Go to the Wuxi Academy. Join the Shaolin, like Kung Lao before you.
I can't. They won't accept.
They care only about what is in your heart, not whom your heart desires.
Melina and Tanya, it's just the fact that they like each other a lot, and they could just be best friends or like warrior pals. I don't know where they got gay from.
The Tarkatans are in position. We await your order.
It is given, dearest Tanya.
I'm always looking for a major property to drop hints about some characters being a part of the LGBTQ+. But disappointingly, they never hard confirmed this in Mortal Kombat X. I have to wonder if they're purposefully spreading misinformation about this game, or if they just have really bad reading comprehension.
There's a good chance that it's probably both.
You're probably right. I also have to say they put pro-DEI messaging. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. I know that a lot of people on the far right view DEI as including people of color, but they also didn't put anything for feminism on their list, so it could also include that. But on that same subject, they don't seem to like when women are performing roles outside of the more traditional sides of things. So instead of feminism, they seem to list traits like women have roles in combat or leadership positions. They also seem to hate when a cast is predominantly people of color. It doesn't matter what the setting is, they just don't like it. Now, these inconsistencies I don't think are as glaring as the LGBTQ+ ones, but I think that they are much more common. Because there are so many games on this list that feature women in roles of leadership or power, and they don't seem to mention it, even if the game features them on the cover. The same seems to go for people of color or people who have dark skin. It seems to be all over the place, whether these people do or don't care about whether these characters are included. I'm going to go over the point I'm trying to get to because some games meet the requirements to be not recommended pretty easily when some games do the same and don't. Saints Row, the 2023 reboot, the intro features a diverse group of female combatants, so pushing the notion that being a woman who is a fighter is a political thing. Assassin's Creed Valhalla includes historically inaccurate POC Vikings. This is something that I see a lot, even outside of this list. The vague integrity of historical accuracy is something that only seems to hinge on whether a person of color or a woman of power exists in that place or time, not whether there are fantasy creatures, magic, or super science where you're able to go back in time and look through the eyes of your ancestors through your own DNA strands. And you'll usually only see this happen when a character doesn't happen to pass the paper bag test, and not when someone is white or has fair skin complexion.
So basically the thing that happened with Genshin Impact.
I really wish we didn't have to keep bringing that up, but it is the perfect example for this. I also think that this list does the disingenuous crime of identity reduction, reframing characters down to one trait. So it's not about what a woman or person of color is doing, it's about them existing. Like they mentioned Greedfall, a game where they say it has out-of-place diversity in a setting largely based on 18th century Europe, features multiple black characters wearing European attire, and features multiple improbable female authority figures, as well as the Wintermoor Tactics Club, which they say the game features an improbably diverse school in the year 1981. Going through this list, you can just tell that they are looking for any reason to not like the inclusion of people of color or women in positions of power. One of their biggest blind spots seems to be anything that has to do with economic or geopolitics. So any messaging that goes against the traits that they have listed, such as colonialism, capitalism, and climate change. The fact that they are pro-colonization and anti-immigration means that they are pro-immigration, but only when it's the people that they approve of. For me, it's fun to find any media that's anti-capitalism because all the story needs is a company that is doing evil or bad things. This can include controlling every aspect of your living, waking, or passed on life. Or that they're so powerful that they are basically the government, which means there is no longer any democracy. You live to serve one entity, and that is the corporation. Some of those games would include Doom 2016, which is about a company that opens up a portal to another dimension so they can steal their energy. Alien Isolation, which the core story is about how you are owned by a corporation, and how these corporations will take advantage of or sacrifice the lives of their workers to attain their goals. At least that's what the overall message of the entire Alien franchise is. Half-Life, which is about rebelling against your government who have teamed up with an interdimensional force which is stripping your planet of your resources, enslaving your people, and assimilating the entire multiverse. I don't know if the anti-colonialism messages can be any clearer. They put Mad Max, which is a story about climate change turning the entire world into a wasteland. The Warhammer franchise, I think, can get its messages mixed up sometimes about its hyper-imperialistic messages. But Warhammer at its core is a satire of imperialism. DMC Devil May Cry has a lot of criticism because of its anti-capitalist messages because they don't go over so well. Outlast is a horror game about an evil corporation. Portal 1 and Portal 2 are about a company that sacrifices its workers to meet its goals. There are so many games with stories and gameplay worth dissecting and understanding them on a deeper level, and people like this are always trying to make you think about media less, which I feel can remove so much of a game's artistic value. They say it's not supposed to be perfect, they say it's supposed to be a work in progress, and they say it's supposed used to start discussion, but as it stands, it is a testament to anti-intellectualism. And the entire purpose of making this list is to make sure they can get as many eyes on these bigoted opinions so they can spread as much hate as fast as possible. I really wish I could say that this list is entirely exaggerated and made to be a joke about people who think things are too woke, and they had all the self-awareness in the world when making it. Sadly, I don't think that's what they were going for. So when I see individuals or companies appeal to people like this who are very close-minded, I have to think sometimes, do they feel that these requests are in any way reasonable? Most of the time, I'm just asking for a cast that is just a little bit diverse. If there was a show, movie, video game, or book with 1,000 characters in their cast, I would at least like one black character. Just one. Include some natural dark skin tones for the characters, and for the love of all that's good in the world, include some good black hairstyles.
Wow, you're really still on that.
That is the whole crux of this entire video and one of the biggest reasons of why I even made it. But surely my requests are much more reasonable than eliminating the existence of gay people entirely. I'm not gonna lie though, I found a lot of games I might be interested in playing just because of this list. It kind of makes me want someone to make a list sort of like this, but it isn't drenched in hate and bigotry. They also listed some games on here that I was like, this game sounds freaking awesome. What is this? Contains overtly anti-Western society messaging, features a story that criticizes neoconservatism, jingoism, the war on terror, American consumerism, and the American politics, among other things. What is this game? I look over and see it, it's Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Sometimes seeing a game on here feels like a badge of honor, but it also feels like a reminder that there are so many closed-minded, ignorant type people who probably would have liked or played that game, not knowing that this game speaks against all the political ideals that they stand for. But you might also see these people worm their ways into fandom spaces for games that aren't quote-unquote political. And if you aren't good at weeding a lot of these ignorant people out of these spaces, there is a possibility that they invite their friends and those friends invite some more people, and eventually you are completely overrun with very closed-minded individuals. And if you don't know what I'm alluding to, there is a name for this and it goes by, I can't really say the name without getting banned on multiple platforms, so I just have to call it the World War II far-right German party bar problem. A lot of people might not think this is a realistic problem to have, but that's exactly how it got its name. The owner of a bar let one of these people in, and when someone pointed out that they were part of that group, he said the person was fine because they weren't doing anything. This person finally found a bar where they weren't going to get kicked out immediately, and you know what they did? They invited their friends invited more people, and all of a sudden this bar became known as the World War II far-right German party bar problem. No one else wanted to come to the bar because they knew about the reputation, and they knew how toxic and unsafe this environment was for the average person. Eventually, he had to close the bar because it was much easier than just kicking them all out. A game that almost fell victim to this was at the Real Game Awards, an independent show made by people who are totally not grifters, where they showcased a game called Celico, and the indie developer who made it had no idea it was going to be featured at this show. After finding out about this, the developer decided to look into what this was all about and found out that the show was attached to a lot of shady figures who pander to the anti-woke crowd. Once they knew, they decided to distance themselves immediately. In this case, I think the developer was very lucky to catch this early and say something before toxic fans became deeply rooted. Some artists might not know that they have toxic fans until they reveal something about their life or identity.
Is that why you made this your first video?
Yeah, pretty much. I had to let people know that I'm a black American who's non-binary and bisexual.
No surprises.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let anybody get caught off guard when I say this about myself a couple videos later and they're like, I didn't know.
How was I supposed to know? Ugh, you're black? Too woke for me.
No, too political.
But this actually brings up a new point. When doing my research, I discovered that there was a YouTuber who revealed they had a black wife, and his fans sent him tons of hate messages, and he found out how racist his fan base was. There are faceless creators on the internet who don't want to reveal the fact that they're black, lest they lose their fan base and a good portion of their income. And now these creators are probably getting more hate messages and getting brand deals that pay out less due to their race.
Wait. You just gave up the bag to tell people that you're black and gay?
Black and bisexual.
That's the same thing.
No, it isn't. We're moving on. We're moving on. I mentioned before that companies should value diversity, and I do think a lot of employees within them actually do. Though I have to question sometimes if the upper management or CEOs feel the same way. Understanding that a lot of these artists have nuanced perspectives that can help make a better game or story, but a lot of these companies are very fearful of scaring away their more closed-minded audience. It's sad to say that a lot of upper management at these companies happen to be very closed-minded themselves. So instead of these artists being able to express their more cultured worldview more fully, I see so many stories of upper management sticking their fingers in the creative process and ruining an artist's inclusive vision. One of these companies actually happen to be really big and contribute to the TV, movie, and gaming space with their own theme.
You're gonna say Disney again. You're really gonna say Disney again. This is going to be the third time you're gonna mention that goddamn company.
Unfortunately, yes, I'm going to be mentioning that goddamn company again. At the time of recording, the Lilo and Stitch live action movie has just been released. I didn't see it in theaters because I heard of how bad of a job they actually did with the original material and adapting it into live action. But from the clips that I've seen and what I've heard, it is really bad and goes against everything that I tried to speak for when defending Disney. And unfortunately, it seems like they've been on this path for a while now with conforming to closed-minded viewpoints, and it seems to only be getting worse. Even when it comes to properties that they recently bought like Star Wars or companies they own like Pixar. It seems that the upper management and CEOs want to lean more into non-inclusive media. Things like changing the lighting in Inside Out 2 to make sure that Riley's friendship with Valentina doesn't come off as gay. Removing the trans storyline in the Disney Plus series Win or Lose. Cutting the budget for the movie Strange World because the main character is gay. Blaming poor box office returns on the movies Soul, Luca, Turning Red, and Lightyear because of inclusive storytelling. Even though all of those movies came out during COVID lockdown, they sometimes blame the failure of the movie Onward because they had a gay cop in it, even though that movie came out at the peak of COVID in March 6th, just a couple weeks before COVID lockdown. Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel Studios, had to fight to make sure that Black Panther and Captain Marvel got made. For many of these projects, Disney fought hard to make sure that nobody saw these movies by cutting their advertising as proof of why they shouldn't be making them. Many Disney animation employees and Pixar employees fighting back hard to make sure that these characters get represented. These sort of things also happened with the game Star Wars The Last Order, not completely seen over by Disney, but the publishers and developers over at EA, Electronic Arts. When the developers ran into a problem when they wanted to make the main character a black woman. But when upper management found out about this, they pushed back on the idea, citing the fact that they already had 2 black characters.
Oh no, we can't have 3 black characters.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing with these people. Too many black people, too many people of color, too many women, and too many gay people. And in all the movie and TV examples that I listed, we already saw that one gay person was too much. So I don't really believe them when they say 3 black people is pushing it. And they said that black people don't look good in a video game because our skin is too glossy. And they didn't want to make the main character a woman because Rey in the Star Wars movies was already a woman. I've heard so many artists leave the industry because they ran into problems like this. In fact, this is the reason why I think we're seeing a sort of renaissance happen in the indie creative space. So many of these upper management types rejecting new and creative ideas, making their own properties flop and fail because they decided to shoot themselves in the foot. The company then purges a lot of their good and well-meaning talent or turns away potential onlookers. So the heads of Disney, thinking they can make a better product than the people who have been making them billions for the past 50 years and more, thinking they can take the remnants of their creative output and turn it into a more generic product, and remove the essence of what made the original story so groundbreaking and stand out from the others. And from what I've heard online, another one of these game developers have fallen for one of these traps, and those are the developers at Larian Studios, the creators of 2023's Game of the Year, Baldur's Gate 3.
Looks like we got another Genshin Impact situation on our hands.
No. I don't think the situation is even close to that one. I have not played the game. This is just from controversies that I've seen online similar to Genshin Impact, but unlike Genshin Impact, I am still very much interested in the game. Much of this controversy comes from Larian's handling of the character Will, a noble warlock who has the least amount of story content out of all of the Origin companions. And when it came to updates for the game, apparently he got no new content whereas other characters did. When looking up videos about Will, most of the content I see is about why people hate him, why people are defending him, or how to fix him.
The fandom of Baldur's Gate 3 has like a huge race problem because what do you mean? There is a lot of like merch and content around like Gammon and Roland. Right, this is part of the reason why I made that video because the first time I ever heard of Baldur's Gate was...
Want to know some fun facts about Will? Will is the only companion in the game whose Act 3 storyline is not about him.
Leave me alone type shift.
I think I would love it if people would stop saying that Will is corny. Listen, I love this man, but if we took all of the companions and put them into real life, do you know who I'm actually dating? Will. Who knows? I hate Will as a Baldur's Gate character. Is exactly what I've been hearing. The microaggression and the downright racism that some of you guys have. So Baldur's Gate 3 patch 8 is up, and there's a lot of content in this patch. Unfortunately, there's no new Will content. So
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. Why can't Carl find some...
Have you seen the comment sections on Larian's latest video for Baldur's Gate 3? Because, they're only asking for one thing, and it's Will content.
the whole reason he signed that pact is because he found out that Tiamat, this is Tiamat, by the way,
This is the last video I'm making about this, because people didn't watch past the first 10 seconds of that video, and it's showing in the comments. And
my name is Will Ravengard, PhD in Rhizonomics.
This is one of my biggest critiques about the whole situation. Will and Lae'zel share one writer.
And yes, unfortunately, Larian Studios really did Will dirty in Baldur's Gate 3.
One of the ways people wanted to fix Will, the only black companion in the game, was by making him white. This isn't a new tactic of making a white mod for a character either. When there happens to be one black character in the game, the first thing a lot of racist modders do is make a white mod for them. So Will isn't so special in that case, but he did get a lot of hate and ire for his character and his race. But the way Larian Studios has been handling his character has been odd throughout. The fact that his story is intrinsically tied to the Baldur's Gate, but he has the least amount of interaction with it. He gets the least amount of dialogue out of all the Origin companions. He is also the least updated. Most story beats don't require his inclusion, even though he has the most attachment to the main plot. Apparently for all the Origin characters, there's a different set of clothing that you get for the campsite versus when you first meet them. Most friendly dialogue options that you have with Will end up with you being mean, rude, or disrespectful to him. And unlike all of the Origin companions, he is the only one that doesn't get a main quest, just a side quest. There have been a lot more points made about Larian's handling of the character Will, and some of their videos are a lot more extensive than mine are, and I think very enjoyable to watch, so I'm just going to run those names through the screen right now so you guys can go check them out. A lot of these outcries didn't go unnoticed by Larian, at least I don't think they were, because in every single video where they didn't update, the comment section is filled with people asking Larian to update the character Will and give him more content. And you can see in the comment section, Larian liked some of the comments, but not the ones mentioning Will. People have also come together to make a petition to try and get Will more content. So now I have to wonder why they made the character Will if they seemingly don't want to do anything else with him. It almost seems like the studio has a grudge on him and wants to do this as a humiliation ritual. I don't know if it's because he's black, but I have heard that Larian Studios does have a bad history of doing their black characters dirty. So this brings me back to my original point that there are some people in the studio who have an inclusive vision, but the upper management isn't exactly on the same page. So I can only imagine that there are people on the Larian team trying to push for more inclusivity. The upper management saw it, begrudgingly gave in, and resentfully continued. And the reason I keep coming back to this point of an internal battle within the development team or in other studios is that within my search for diverse media, or even researching for this video right now, is that most diversity that I've seen within shows, movies, and video games had to be pushed for. It sadly wasn't just happenstance or a stroke of luck or the artist deciding on a whim to put more diverse characters in the story. A lot of it has to be very intentional, or the person already has to have that subconscious leaning. So I can only think that the artist or writer who made the character Will took a lot of time and effort when crafting them. But maybe the main story director or upper management were not as big of fans of the character Will. Of course, I am very excited and happy that they decided to include a black person in their story, but in that same vein, I have to be wary of their treatment of that black character. And from what I know, Baldur's Gate is a licensed title owned by Wizards of the Coast, who are the makers of Dungeons and Dragons. The creation of the game is inspired by the J.R.R. Tolkien fantasy novels, which are the foundation for a lot of high fantasy books, games, movies, TV shows, animes, and whatever you can name. If it's got orcs, a warthog looking enemy, or a warrior race, it was probably inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien.
It's pronounced Tolkien.
Right. I watched the movie. I watched the totally historically accurate movie of Tolkien. I also have to add that dark elves or the drow are a large part of the reason why we have dark-skinned characters with white hair in media. Does a piece of media have elves or beings with pointy ears? It most likely came from one of the two. So both of them are probably core to the reason why I and many others enjoy fantasy media today. But that's not entirely why I'm here to talk about them, because both of them have their own pitfalls in their writing, characters, and world design. And a lot of this comes from their own flawed worldview and inspirations.
Great, now we're gonna get the Tolkien fans to cancel us.
Actually, Tolkien might be a good starting point because of his stance on allegory and stories. Tolkien says, "I cordially dislike allegory in all its manifestations, and always have done since I grew old and wary enough to detect its presence. I much prefer history, true or feigned, with its varied applicability to the thought and experience of the readers. I think many confuse the applicability of allegory, but one resides in the freedom of the reader and the other in the purpose of domination of the author." This is definitely one of Tolkien's more highly debated quotes. I think many people have come to the conclusion that Tolkien does not completely hate allegory. This quote can be a little bit confusing, as Tolkien has written more direct allegory within his story before. His worldview and his life experience is also taking a notable effect on his written work. Apparently, fans and other readers have tried to push that his stories are an allegory for nuclear powers and political leaders. When Tolkien heard about these claims, he rejected them completely. And I think this made him a little resentful of anybody who tried to make allegories out of his work that he didn't fully intend to make. This is a sentiment that I think we can all understand, people mixing up and misinterpreting words and things that we're trying to say. But I feel there is a problem when he dismisses allegory completely, as it is just another way of analyzing a story. And as much as we don't want people taking certain messages away from our story, that is something that's going to happen, good or bad. But I think we should be able to make the call if these takes are valid, hold water, or make much sense. Because at the end of the day, allegories of fiction will never have a one-to-one with real life. But I think that's the fun of an allegory, the fact that it will never be a perfect representation of real life events. Out of the many forms of analyzation, allegory is actually one of the best ways to give you a better understanding of a story through personal and world events. Anchoring plot points and character perspectives to real life can actually help give you a deeper understanding of them. Some people might not care what a character went through until they went through it themselves. Does this mean that the author was directly writing about your own life? Does this mean that the author was trying to talk about specific political events? The simple thing is, the audience is the one that takes away what they want from the story. And these stories are not entirely separate from the people that make them. And if you are going to write about something like war and genocide, one of the most political events that can ever occur, it is safe to say that many people will draw parallels between wars that would happen at the time of writing and wars that would happen later, even if the writer never lived to experience those events. The human experience is vast and complex, but we have more similarities than we have differences. But this isn't a comment on Tolkien's worldview or politics. That's why I also listed Dungeons & Dragons and the co-creator Gary Gygax.
Welp, you did it now. Here comes the Twitter mob to come and cancel you.
I'm pretty sure it's not going to be that bad. I'm just here to talk about Gary Gygax's view of being a biodeterminist and how that can negatively affect his stories.
There you go, you got canceled. You just talked about someone's favorite guy in a negative light.
I'm pretty sure I got canceled a long time ago when I talked about Genshin Impact. Some people have posed that Gary Gygax is a white supremacist, but looking into it, I couldn't find much evidence supporting those claims. Him being a self-proclaimed biodeterminist has a visible effect on the game Dungeons & Dragons. And one of the key features that really shows this is D&D's own alignment chart. Now, the alignment chart on its own is not a bad thing, but when you couple this with the predisposed traits that certain races are supposed to have, it gets a little messy. Gygax has stated that when you are doing your own D&D run, that you can change the rules however you please. But when it comes to the canonical stories of D&D, this is a static factor. One of the examples that Gygax brings up about why he is a biodeterminist is his view on females and how they are wired to not want to play role-playing games. He brings up his own daughters as an example to perhaps show that he raised them to like role-playing games, but they still didn't end up liking them. This ignores a couple of factors, like parents not being the only influence on a child's life, or the fact that girls might not be raised to like the exact same type of role-playing stories. This also might ignore that boys are raised to like more action and fighting in their stories, while girls might appreciate a more heavy emotional core and deeper character dynamics. Those might not be the reasons why his daughters didn't stay interested in D&D, but to make sweeping generalizations that females do not enjoy things such as LARPing can be very lazy thinking. So his rigid way of thinking that I think goes against the way the world actually works and how humans develop, which I believe it's how people were raised, the people they grew up around, and the environment they came from. Even if Gygax says in your own D&D runs, the story can develop in any way that you choose, but in the making of D&D canon, he made it so that races are predisposed to be good or evil, which means that characters and other beings are who they are because of what they are. And this kind of thinking actually does away with fundamental parts of writing, which is subverting plots and characters. Even stories that people consider to be simple use subversion to great effect, such as the late Akira Toriyama, who loves making robots the emotional core of the story, the most inhuman actually being the most human. Even D&D's own licensed game, Baldur's Gate 3, which we were previously talking about, in which the character Will Ravengard, a warlock, cannot be more than a neutral on the alignment chart, because of warlocks being historically evil within D&D lore. But Mr. Sir Ravengard promotes himself as a hero and is seen as a lawful good on the alignment chart. This subversive writing can only happen due to a slight change in the guard, with Wizards of the Coast finally changing D&D's alignment chart to finally be null and invalid. So any character of any race and of any practice can be good or evil if one so chooses. And I think this opens up so many more new avenues for story writing in D&D. But from what I've heard from the tabletop community, I should probably keep my distance from Wizards of the Coast for now until—
No, you are not about to go on another rant about another horrible company.
I'm not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's it. I went over everything that I was supposed to go over in my 8-minute script that turned into 1 hour. I have no idea how this got away from me so badly. I really wanted to end this video so long ago, but that Genshin part took up so much time, and then I knew I had to do so much more for the other parts. I really hope you guys enjoyed my first video. This is my first crack at a big video essay, so all of the editing skills I had to learn on the spot, all of the fact checking and research, and trying to find my voice when making this whole entire video. This was honestly so much fun, and I do have plans for other videos, but I'm not going to do a video this long for a good long while. And I really hope this doesn't blow up in my face, because I went over a lot of heavy and political topics in my first video, and I'm not sure how the internet's going to handle this. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.